Hello and welcome to the Expressed on Purpose podcast. I'm your host, Adrian-Smith. This podcast is on a journey to uncover the essence of full authentic expression and what it means to truly be ourselves. And on this step of the journey, I have the pleasure of interviewing Eilat Aviram, a daring decisions teacher who helps people to reconnect with their love so that they might live life daring to be themselves. And as we explore this journey of so very powerful question to get you in touch with your soul and your heart's essence, as well as a tool to help you navigate the more challenging times. And I use an example of being addicted to coffee some days and how to work through those cravings in a very healthy and fully connected way that I found very powerful on my journey to loving myself more fully. As well as this, we go into the depths of meeting your needs, being the essence of loving yourself, and what that really means to meet your needs. And we also touch upon using different body parts as a way, as a bridge to cross over from the mind into the physical and emotional space that we occupy every day. This was a really interesting conversation I had with Eilat, and I hope you enjoy it and find as much wisdom as I do. Check out the links in the summary notes for how to find out more about Eilat and her work, from her book to her courses. I hope you enjoy this one as much as I did. Welcome, Eilat Aviram. It's a pleasure to have you on the Expressed on Purpose podcast, to be exploring full authentic expression and really from your wisdom of this beautiful, empowering and daringly decisive question of, if I loved myself fully, what would I do now? And so I would just like to start, if you can give a little bit of a background about who you are and what you love to be in this world.
That's a great beginning. First of all, thank you for inviting me. Expressing yourself on purpose is something I'm very passionate about. Where do I go? My work, my soul, my person. I'm a daring decisions teacher. It's what I call myself, because I have been working for 27 years or so to help people dare to choose the things they actually want to do. Mm-hmm. And I'm deeply passionate about helping people learn to listen to themselves, live in a way that feels authentic, that feels true, and is daring, not conforming to what's expected of us, not listening to what other people think is best for us, but rather listening to the only world expert on us, which is ourselves.
Beautiful. Thank you. Yeah, I'm sure you can speak for a long time about all those areas. And yeah, I'd love to just dive straight into this daring aspect, because when I've used this tool, there's always an answer that comes up. There's always an answer that comes, for me anyway, quite quickly. It's quite clear. And every time I followed the answer, even if it wasn't what I wanted to do, I felt great afterwards. I've loved myself in the process.
Very happy. My tail is wagging. But the people that are listening don't know what the tool is and what you're talking about yet.
Yeah, so maybe you can start by just explaining it to us.
Tantalize them for a while, and you can say how wonderful it is and all the good things that happen, and then
wait till the end to find out. Yeah. No, yeah, so I'll be happy, rather than diving into the other aspect, I'd love for you to just share a bit about the tool, a bit about maybe where it came from, and maybe just giving some little hints as to where it can be used most powerfully.
I think where it came from is that in my clinical practice, I'm a clinical psychologist, I'm an hypnotherapist, I'm an author, I'm a speaker. And in all these years of working with people, I've really found that there is one thing. Seems so crazy to say there's this one thing, but it really is. There is this one thing that seems to trip us up again and again, and it interferes and messes with so many aspects of our lives. And it seemed to be the reason that many people landed up in therapy, coming to see me, coming for help. It interferes with relationship, it interferes with parenting, it interferes with health, everything. And this one thing that we do that seems to trip us up again and again is that we do not listen to ourselves. And when we don't listen to ourselves, we land up in trouble. It's kind of such an obvious thing, but we're trained out of listening to ourselves by many, many things in our society, in our world, capitalism, religion, schools, parenting, etc. So the question that often comes up in people's minds as I say these sorts of things is, am I preaching anarchy? You know, should we buck the system? Should we just everybody do what they want to do? Isn't this a selfish way of living? Isn't this dangerous? What about all the narcissists running around doing whatever they want to do? And I'm not at all saying that, because when we listen to our real, genuine inner guidance, it is actually very focused on harmony, collaboration. And I should probably tell you what the tool is, otherwise it
Yeah, I
won't.
was going to say, you're really building it up. That's great.
So at the center of every choice that you make, every single little thing that you face, what should I eat for breakfast? What color socks should I wear? Should I have this medical procedure? Should I marry this person? Should I emigrate? Should I take this job? Should I quit my job? At the center of any choice that you face is what I call a sacred moment. And in that moment, you will either turn towards your truth, what you want to do, what you prefer, what feels right for you, or you turn away from it. It kind of seems to not be a middle ground so much. It's like a T-junction. Either turn towards what is calling to you, or you turn away from what is calling to you. And the outcome of your choice depends entirely on whether you turned towards yourself or away from yourself. Because as I said, when we don't listen to ourselves, we get into trouble. So if we're really longing to do something and we turn away from it because what would people say, or I don't think the neighbors would like it, or I don't know if I'm comfortable putting myself out there like that, we turn away from the thing we want, then we land up living in a life that doesn't have the things we want in it. And obviously the opposite is true. If we turn towards ourselves and we deeply listen to ourselves, then we live in a world that feels like it's your birthday or Christmas every day, because someone really, really loves you and is looking after you and is making sure that all the nice things you want are there and that you're listened to and you matter and you're important. So it's a very profound thing to take that sacred moment. It's a power moment. It's a moment where you make choices, where you make your decisions, and to do it consciously and to do it deliberately and to actively turn towards yourself in the choices that you make. So the tool that we've been referring to, mysterious tool, is a question that I like to teach, which is that at the point of decision, whatever the choice you're facing, breakfast or immigration, whatever it may be, you pause and you ask yourself, if I loved myself, what would I choose to do now? Or if I loved myself, what would I say to myself now? Sometimes it's not so much an action, but a reassurance that's required in that moment. So I guess that speaks to the selfishness and the narcissism and all of that, because if you genuinely love yourself and you're making choices from a place of genuine self-care and consideration, you're not going to do things that damage the people you love or break down the systems that are supporting you. You do things that enhance your community, that enhance your family, because that enhances you. But you don't do it for them. You do it for you. They benefit.
Yeah, beautiful. Well, thank you so much for sharing that in your own eloquence. Many questions to explore from that. And the one that's coming up for me first is, the way I explain it to people is, the mind is like a computer. And so this question primes the mind to answer it in a certain parameter, which is the love parameter, which immediately allows it to cut out all of the chaff of all the other answers that it could possibly give. Oftentimes we're asking our head or in our mind questions like, why did I do that? Why am I so stupid? I can't believe I messed that up again. And your mind is just going to answer those questions. So then to reframe it into this loving position or perspective gives you the opportunity to prime the mind and use the way it's there as a tool to help us make decisions alongside our body. And so my question here is for you of who do you perceive, who's your understanding of the self and the one kind of answering and asking the question in that instance?
Ooh, I can answer you in about 3 different ways at least. Because we can go into intuition, you can look at it from a spiritual perspective, or you can look at it from a biological perspective. I like to start with a biological perspective because that's the one most people are comfortable with. And then you can extrapolate it to wherever it is that you want to go and what suits you. I teach this a lot in my workshops. We work very actively with the body, and I know that that is something that you resonate with in the teaching that you do. Also very much about bringing the body and the mind into harmony and the autonomic nervous system. So the beautiful way of seeing this in short is that your brain, as the incredible computer that it is, as you said, is constantly scanning the environment for signs of safety and danger. That's its job, really, to keep us safe. So it's collecting all the data, all the bits of information, and scanning it to see, is it safe, is it not safe, is it safe, is it not safe? And it uses your brain to send out danger warnings or calming down warnings, depending on what it picks up and how it analyzes the data. So when I ask if I loved myself, what would I choose to do now? What's actually happening is my brain is taking in all of the information that it has about me, about my desires, about the state of my well-being, about the situation that's available. And it's kind of saying, because my brain, bless it, is not so interested in whether I feel spiritually nourished. It's wanting to know, is this biological organism going to thrive and survive, or is it going to die? And, so that's really its main interest. So as I'm asking, if I loved myself, what would I choose to do now? I'm actually opening up my mind to hearing and sensing what's going on in my body and in my brain. And it, in a way, it's kind of like it's pressing the return after you've done the whole calculation. You're pressing equals, and then you get the results of the calculation. My brain is going to bring to me, through the feelings and sensations in my body, the direction and the option that is going to be the one that will help my biological organism optimally thrive. So on the biological perspective, it's like, who is telling me which way to go? My body feels good or it feels bad. My chest lightens, or it tightens. My breath comes deeper or it comes shallower, depending on whether my brain is judging this option to be better and more likely to help me thrive, or that one. So just that's the biological perspective. And from there, you can take it to all sorts of places.
Great. Well, thank you for sharing the biological. And I think that's an important framework to have an initial lens to it. Personally speaking, I love to explore where it takes us after that. So I'm interested to hear the next stage.
I guess I personally am quite a spiritual person. It is what drives me. And I do feel that we are souls here doing our best to wake up and live the most alive and online way that we are able to. I do feel like that is the purpose for all of us. And whatever we express is simply the expression of how aligned we are and how much we can let ourselves shine in the way that we uniquely shine, as we are all parts of a network and I suppose it's like cells in a body. Your job is to keep yourself as vibrant and as healthy as possible, because it benefits all the cells around you and it benefits the whole body. So when I ask if I love myself, what would I choose to do now? First of all, it's inner child work. So whatever parts of myself have learned that they're not lovable, not enough, aren't allowed to express themselves through my experience of childhood or, whatever the society that I live in, those parts suddenly get listened to and get given space to express themselves. And so I get to know myself more and more by the decisions that I make. That's also something I love about this method, because you'd kind of think that you already know yourself. And so you say, well, if I loved myself, I know what I would choose. But actually, have you had that experience of asking the question and being surprised by the answer? Has that happened to you?
Yeah, many times. Yeah. It was a curious, like, oh, that's really the answer. Like, okay. And then I try it and I'm like, wow, that really was what made me feel great afterwards. Yeah.
So that's one of the things I absolutely adore about this method is that you kind of get to know yourself by asking, well, if I love myself, what would I do? And then it's something surprising and you go, really? Is that me? Is that what I would do? And then you do it and you go, oh yeah, that really did feel nice. I do like that. I love that it helps me get to know myself and helps people. I suppose you're kind of creating your identity at the same time as you're creating your life.
Mm. Yeah, which in an essence of a spiritual being and becoming more awake is kind of what we're here to do, is this identity in each and every moment. There is no past or future us, there is only us in this moment, so we have to recreate in this present.
And everything we do is based on our choices, and you're creating yourself all the time by what you choose to do. Everything, this morning, you sitting there, what you wore, what you said to your family before coming into the room, that creates the experience that you have. And so if you are just creating your experience in a sort of routine, automated, unconscious way, that's one thing. But if you go, okay, if I loved myself, what would I choose to do now? If I loved myself, what would I say to myself about this thing I'm finding difficult? Then suddenly you're creating a life that's based on you mattering, you being loved, you being important enough to be allowed expression. That's just so cool.
Yeah. Yeah. And that really is a beautiful underpinning of what I believe is important for people to strive towards. Because if you're not living a life that you love and you're not loving yourself in your life, then who are you living this life for? Maybe there's certain instances where there's a sense of sacrifice to support the greater whole or the family, but then there's a sense of you can do that from a loving place rather than I need to give everything in order that I let this flourish. But an analogy came to me. I love to use nature to kind of describe things. And so there was this analogy, rather than it be a T-junction, but it's the stem of a plant that's having this opportunity in every moment to split or to continue. And the splitting is to either continue towards the sun, i.e. towards love, or away from the sun, i.e. towards the ground, both of which will create a plant at the end of the day, one of which will be a mighty tree, and the other one will turn into a shrub that's still beautiful in its own way, but isn't as fully expressed, isn't as fully flourished, can't produce fruits in the same way as this tree or person who's loved themselves fully. So that kind of analogy just came to me as a way of kind of grounding that in from a perspective of seeing humans as if they were trees in this full blossoming.
I love that, and it brings to mind all sorts of things. There is a meme I saw a while back, and I don't remember what the byline was, but it was the photograph of a tree that had grown up and then had sort of angled down towards the ground. The trunk was showing the tree's journey, angled down towards the ground, and then the last part was rising back up again. And the byline was something hilarious about, here's me after having given up and finally found my voom again. But also, as you were speaking, that's the picture that popped to my head. And I thought, it's never too late. No matter what you have chosen for yourself and in your life, it's not too late ever to stop right now. Because as you were saying, we create it moment by moment. We are here now, and that's what exists. So even if you're sitting and listening to this right now and you have a life that you feel trapped by, and you've made so many choices that are not self-loving, or that you're realizing now were not self-loving, you can start now. Like that tree, that last part was rising back up again. You can at any point, and I've seen it actually at the end of people's lives, they've started to do this, or, started to ask, what is my truth? What is right for me? And they've shifted big things just before dying.
Wow.
Never too late. It really is not.
Yeah.
It's never too late with your adult children. It's never too late with family. It's just never too late.
Yeah. Yeah, beautiful. It's a lifeline for anybody who wants to start from now. And I think just speaking to that, because from my own experience, it's all well and good asking the question, getting the answer, but then here comes the courageous and daring part, which is to actually take the action on the answer. I'm sitting here with a cup of coffee this morning. One of my things I keep going back and forward on, if I love myself fully, would I drink coffee this morning? No. And yet I feel tired and I think, oh no, I want to drink a coffee because I have a podcast to do and I want to be alert for the podcast. And so I'd love to kind of explore that topic with you, of this daring aspect of making this. Oftentimes, I guess in my experience, it takes more willpower because the habituation is not in a self-loving way. You have to take a decision that's surprising or different or counterintuitive to what you would think, but actually that's the thing that is loving for you. So I'd love for you to talk about that a bit more as well.
That's a beautiful question and a beautiful topic, and it's huge. So my brain is going 50 directions. Which delicious morsel shall I pick on? Actually, speaking of morsel and picking on, in my food chapter, in my first book, there's the chapter How to Love Yourself If I Loved Myself in My Food.
Yeah.
So there's food, health and body, parenting. But there's a section called How to Love Yourself Through a Craving. And the beginning introduction to that section, it's a really powerful exercise, by the way, if you have things that you're wishing that you didn't do. It's a very loving way to get yourself into consciousness about them. But the introduction to that section says something like, willpower is only as good as you feel strong that day. So, but that when you're facing a tired morning and you want your coffee, or if you're facing the fridge and the cheesecake, or if you don't want to go work out, or whatever the case may be, if you're not feeling strong, if you haven't had enough sleep, if you had a fight with your loved one the day before, whatever the case may be, willpower is not really going to help you through as you are with your coffee, right? And I'm not judging coffee. You are saying that you don't want to be drinking that coffee. That's the only thing that I'm responding to. So there's no judgment about the coffee here. But what I say is that, the willpower is not really going to be helpful. Rather than willpower, use love. Love yourself through it. And the way to do it is not in great big steps. I always say there's that part where you have to take the action is usually where the wheels come off, because you're like, okay, I've asked the question and I know what I need to do. And now, okay, I'm not going to do that. Like, oh, no, that's too scary. That's too much. So when you do ask the love question, have you had that experience have you ever had an answer that feels too big to do?
Yeah.
And then I suppose in a way the coffee thing feels too big to do, right?
Yeah, it's a curious one, the bigness. There's been certain ones that feel too big, and then there's other ones which, the coffee one is kind of a willpower one, or my left brain logical reasoning side comes in with all the chatter that is quite loud sometimes. And then,
Rich, can I take you through a process?
I'd love that. Yeah, I was actually going to say maybe we'll go into a process today, so I'd be happy to do that.
So I will do it briefly, and it's in my book and it's in my workshop. But I call the decision-making method allow, which feels, very apt. And it's ALLOW, allow. And the first step is A, which stands for acknowledge, which is the moment where you acknowledge the discomfort. So in your case right now, it's like, I don't feel good about having this coffee, even though I'm enjoying the coffee and I feel like I need it. So it's kind of that moment of, I don't feel in alignment with myself. Or it might be a moment where you have to make a decision. So earlier on, when you were thinking, should I have the coffee or shouldn't I have the coffee? That was also an A. That's a moment of acknowledging, okay, I have something to decide here. There's discomfort, there's stress, there's unease of some kind. Then the first L is for lay it out. You just need to state very factually what the situation is. So in your case now, you actually stated it very clearly just now. You said, I'm drinking this coffee. I got the answer that it is not what is the self-loving thing, but actually I'm tired and I want to be awake. So, and here I am drinking the coffee. So it's just laying it out. We're not going into the analysis of why maybe and what the willpower thing is. And then the second L is the love question, which is a tool that we're saying. So you went through the love question earlier when you were wondering, should I have the coffee or shouldn't I? So this is actually a lovely example, because where I'm taking it to is this moment right now where you're sitting and you're going, I'm drinking the coffee that I said wasn't self-loving.
Mm-hmm.
That's actually the moment that we want to focus on right now.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So does that feel true so far? You don't feel
Yeah.
comfortable about drinking the coffee, but here you are drinking it and you know why.
Yeah.
So I want to bring the love question in. If you loved yourself, what would you say to yourself about drinking this coffee now?
I would speak to myself as I was speaking to my son, who is 2.5, 3 years old. And it's with compassion, saying, I understand that you want to drink the coffee and you have your reasons for it. And if you really, really need and want to in this moment, I'm still going to love you. And it's the most loving choice to choose another drink or choose another option in this moment.
And what happens in your body in response? In particular, what happens in your chest when you say these things?
Yeah, there's a softening, there's less of a bracing, less of a holding on to like, no, I want to have the coffee. Okay, maybe I could choose another option. And there was kind of a moment there of like, oh, what other options do I have? Oh, there's like a tea, or there's a matcha I could make, or there's a little mushroom drink that I have. And so suddenly there was those options kind of blossomed.
Okay. So it was a non-judgmental response from you. You looked at yourself as you do with your son, and you know that he's just learning and figuring things out. And so you said, it's okay, I understand where you're at, but there are other options.
Mm-hmm.
And so it sort of opened the door for who you are and where you are is okay. And you can also choose something that will be even better for you. And that felt like it eased. Your body responded with a softening.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that's your body. And so that kind of is the O that you opened to your answer. And W is walk the next step. And in your case, in this, because the question was, what would you say to yourself now?
Mm-hmm.
Walking the next step is actually saying it to yourself and hearing it, which you did.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
And we know that it's your truth because your body responded to it with softening of some kind. Maybe your breath deepened a little bit, your muscles relaxed a bit. And that's your autonomic nervous system giving the all clear. It's going, thumbs up, this is the optimal way of thriving.
Mm-hmm. This is safe. Yeah, this is good for you. Yeah. And I think I really appreciate you taking me through this, because I think this bridges a little bit of a gap between the loving decision and the taking decision, and this kind of steps along there a bit more gradually to kind of bring you towards that place without having to kind of make a big leap over to it, which
is impossible. And it freaks us out. And then we run away in the opposite direction and go back to the uncomfortable but familiar things. So the beauty of this is that your love question is never your answer is never going to give you something more than you can handle. Mm-hmm. But what's fascinating is that, so you got the question, that you got the answer this morning of like, no, I don't want to drink this because it's not self-loving to drink the coffee. Mm-hmm. But it didn't also go to let me choose something else. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because that was too overwhelming in that moment. You were tired and you needed to do this podcast and you wanted to be fresh. Mm-hmm. So it felt like too big a leap. And so what you'll often find is, you may have noticed it, but hopefully us having this conversation will make you much more aware of it. And in our workshops, it's actually quite fun. People call each other out on this all the time in a good way. It's just we're all helping each other learn to do this. But you'll ask the love question, if I loved myself, what would I choose to do now? And then you will immediately get your response of some kind. Something pops to your mind or your heart, or some sort of feeling happens, or you suddenly remember something, and that is the answer. And you, like for you in this morning, it was like, I would not drink the coffee. If I loved myself, I would not drink the coffee. And that feels great for like a half a split second. And then the next thing that happens is like, but I can't not drink the coffee. How am I going to stay awake? What about, I'm tired. And, so all of the but I can't do that come in. Mm-hmm. And sometimes it happens so quickly that you don't even really register that you got that. The first answer in the first place. So where we like to call each other out is that you'll notice in yourself or on someone else's face, you get a little smile for a very brief moment. You're like, oh yeah, that would be so good. And then the tension comes back as you realize all the ways that that's going to be very hard to do or scary. And so that's the moment to start the A again, because that's the new point of discomfort. Like, okay, I got that answer, but now I've freaked out again. If I love myself, what would I choose to do, or what would I say to myself? And then you open to the answer, and then you walk the next step. And that way you can really, tiny step by tiny step, climb mountains or extract yourself from really complicated and difficult situations.
Yeah, beautiful. That's, I think, a very powerful tool, because making the smaller steps is much more achievable and attainable than trying to make the big step.
You can't make the big steps. We're not designed for that.
There's been periods where I've kind of done it for 3 weeks, and I've kind of made promises to myself, and I've had enough willpower in those moments, and then wasn't aware of this allow tool, so I'm definitely going to try this one now.
That's in the second book. That's You Have Permission to Exist. That kind of really lays out the allow, and it also, that whole book focuses on relationships, and that is relationships not only with other people but also with yourself. So it's about your head talk and your thoughts. I think you will probably find that quite nourishing.
Yeah, I'm going to go and check it out. Yeah, I loved listening. I listened to your first book on audio, and you have a beautiful South African accent, so it's really a pleasure to listen to it. And your energy really comes across in the book, so I'm definitely going to read or
that
listen.
That is very much my intention. My intention is like, I'm bringing the energy in, I'm bringing the energy, I'm radiating the energy. The second book as well, it's also an audio book.
Amazing. And yeah, that permission aspect is a powerful one, and it's one I think that I have struggled with. I think a lot of people in being raised in the schooling system in the UK or in any kind of high achieving circumstances where we weren't told we have permission to be ourselves. We were told you need to be a good boy, you need to dress a certain way, and you need to go down a certain path. And then when you do your achievements, I'm going to shower you with love and praise. And if you don't do your achievements, then I'm going to criticize you and I'm going to push you into this direction. So that cultivates this state of being of not feeling like we can be ourselves. And there's been moments where I've had to physically write myself a letter. This was when I left my last job, and I was able to live off my dividends for a year or two. And at the start of it, I was still tapping my chair to say, okay, what do I got to do? What next? And I had to write myself a letter saying, I give myself permission to relax and to not do anything. And that actually softened that aspect of me, like, okay, I don't have to keep going. I don't have to keep striving. I can actually allow myself to just be in this moment rather than have to do and create a to-do list. So I wonder if you can speak to any other tools you have for helping people to give themselves that permission.
Oh, I love that. Thank you for sharing that. It's such a brave thing to do, to shift careers from something that's so socially approved of to something that's kind of more, people sort of raise eyebrows and get a little nervous around. And that really is a daring decision that you took, of deeply listening to yourself and knowing that you just can't go anymore in that direction because it's sort of killing your spirit.
Yeah.
And I think we're taught to expect our spirit to be killed, or muted, at the very least, to live with a muted spirit. In the other book, which I think you really, really need to read because I think it'll speak to your heart deeply. One of the chapters is why we don't listen to ourselves, and I actually list all these huge structures and societal boxes and ways that really teach us not to listen to ourselves. And you have huge forces against you listening to yourself. Like I mentioned at the beginning, there's capitalism, there's religion, there's family, there's marriage, there's fashion, there's health, there's all these things, the ways that we are told how we should be. And it comes at us fast and furious all the time. So to do any kind of listening to ourselves is already quite, a friend of mine told me that my work is subversive. I was like, what do you mean? I'm talking about how to love yourself and listen to your truth, all like la flowers and peace and trees. And she said, exactly. And it forced me into very deep thinking. What does she mean? It's subversive to listen to yourself. And then I started to really see how unusual it is and how much we're not told that. So one of the exercises, so the second book is called You Have Permission to Exist. And the cover is, I had so much fun with the design of it, but the cover is a little like Post-it note stuck with a red tack, and it's sort of handwritten, You Have Permission to Exist. And like a note that you've written to yourself, which you really, really did. And so one of the exercises is simply in the morning and in the evening, or 3 times a day, to say to yourself 3 times, I have permission to exist. I have permission to exist. I have permission to exist. And just taste that. What does it bring up? And first thing in the morning, sometime in the afternoon, and in the evening, just to do that for a few days and just notice what stirs.
Yeah, I can feel the power of that question. It's the dissolution of the shoulding and the need to be, and the supporting of kind of the essence of this podcast, which is this full authentic expression. It's the who you came here to be as your unique self, and that's what the world needs you to be. The world doesn't need you to be another square in a hole. It needs you to be the star-shaped uniqueness of you are, so that others can see you being you, giving themselves permission to be themselves. And
it's very inspiring when we see somebody being themselves and being different and being unusual. And I think a lot of the really successful people are different, and that's why they succeed.
Yeah.
But then we are deeply trained into looking at how they're doing it differently and trying to emulate that, because that clearly was the success. And also judging our success by how much money we're earning and how much status we have and how many clients and how full, and especially that awful thing we do of how busy you are. That's a wonderful indication of you having success and worth and value, because you're very, very busy. And so when you're saying these beautiful things like, you know, the world needs us to be who we are and to be star-shaped, I'm hearing you and I completely agree with you. But at the same time, I know that that is not at all what most people are sitting with, and they might say, oh, well, it's easy for you because clearly, you know, you could afford to go off and do something different, but I'm in the rat race and I have to make a difference, and I'm corporate. And I know that you cater to your clientele are founders and businesses, and they're, you know, people who are very driven and motivated, and they've created something. And especially if you're an entrepreneur, and especially if it's your business, it's very, very hard to give yourself a break. It's very scary to just stop, or to pause, or to ask yourself, if I loved myself, what would I choose to do? That question frightens people, because people are like, I'd quit my job, I'd go and do something else. It's a totally unrealistic question, just, you know, but that's not at all how it works. When you really are listening to yourself, very often it's, people might say, oh, I should leave my job. And maybe that's true, but maybe you don't need to leave your job, but you need to do it differently.
Yeah.
You need to adjust your schedule. You need to adjust the way you speak to yourself. You need to adjust how you create space for yourself to breathe in your workday. You need to actually have lunch, you know, and go to the toilet when you need to. You can't believe how many people hold it for hours because, you know, I'm busy. So that profound self-care is so simple and so small. We think it's going to be big and dramatic. It's not. It's not. It's, if I love myself, I would pack myself lunch, and I wouldn't say yes to an extra project, and I would be careful of that colleague because I know that their energy is not great, and it always brings me down because they just want to complain to me, and then I'm too drained to do my work. And so if I love myself, I would say, sorry, I'm busy right now, and I wouldn't listen this time, so that it's such simple little things, but as you said, it's permission.
Yeah, those micro decisions, I think it's Lao Tzu of the journey is made of 1,000 steps. And it's really that and what we talked about before, there's the big jump into what actually is loving, and you're kind of seeing off into the distance another mountaintop, and you're here and you say, wow, I can't possibly get there. But to be able to take these small, minute changes can change the way that you experience your day-to-day life. And speaking from my own experience working in an investment bank, it was kind of this essence of you're either in or you're out. And then now I kind of say to some people, which is easy for me to say now because I'm not in, but it's the same for all corporate roles, really, of the company is going to expect the world from you, and the only person to really decide that is you. And you have an opportunity to choose how your day goes about. And there was one of my clients just recently who was saying about how he was working very hard in the mornings, and then we'd go skiing for a few hours, and then we'd do a bit of work in the afternoon. And he felt very guilty about doing that, and he was feeling worried. And then he went and did his review, and his boss commended him for a work-life balance and said, you're a great role model for the rest of the team to get work done and enjoy yourself and have this balance. And he was totally shocked that that was the response. And so I think this is a great example of being able to do things in a way that is loving of yourself and is still performing the thing that you want to do, but it's just doing it in your own flavor, rather than saying everybody needs to be sitting at their desk for 9 hours straight and being as busy and as productive as humanly possible is the goal, rather than reflecting on just these small decisions, as you said, just taking a break.
Or to look as though you are super productive whilst hiding all these little guilty habits and things that you then feel bad about. Instead of, I mean, that's a very enlightened boss, and I'm very grateful that that guy had this experience of a boss actually saying, well done, because he was obviously able to keep up with his workload as well.
Mm-hmm.
The reality for a lot of people is that they wake up to a day that's full of things that they don't really want to do. And it can be at work, it can be at home, if you're a parent, if you've got kids, if you're struggling with money. There are a lot of things that make us feel like that's a ridiculous question. I can't go around asking if I loved myself. What is this thing? Yeah, very nice. Moving on. But if you pause and realize that the only person in charge of your day is you, then that already starts to make you think. And then people would say, no, but I'm not in charge of my day. I have all these things to do. I have to prepare the kids, get them to school, then I have to get to work, and I have to take my car in for service, and also it's tax time. And there are a lot of things that are calling on a person, a lot of obligations that we have in the lives that we've created.
Mm-hmm.
But you could, hypothetically, not to frighten anyone off, but hypothetically, you could take this overwhelming list of things that you need to do and ask yourself, well, if I loved myself, how would I approach all these things? How would I organize my day so that it doesn't feel so completely draining and trapping and terrifying? If I loved myself, which of these tasks would I do first? And how would I do it? And things start to shift in sneaky, surprising little ways when you do that. It's actually a lot more productive when you're having fun.
Yeah, that's for sure. I mean, speaking from a nervous system perspective, if you're in fight or flight, you're not able to access all parts of your brain. You're not able to have wide, clear vision to make good decisions with. And so then if that's your constant state, you're going into work and you're stressed, and then you're going home and you're kind of stressed and not sleeping well, you're in this vicious cycle. And so creating that little gap for yourself, even in the smallest way. One of my other guests was Erin Baker, and her book is on joyful business. And her whole approach is about bringing joy into everything you do and approaching things from joy. And that's been a very powerful alternate to the love question is the joy question. And both have the same kind of ends and means in mind, but are slightly nuanced approaches to the same concept.
What will bring me most joy now? How can I do it in the way that will be most joyful to me? Absolutely. That is self-love.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. One of the other areas in your book, which I really loved, was your use of body parts and the use of kind of the saying that comes to your mind to start to speak to your body and to connect to your body. Maybe you can talk a little bit more about that, if that gives you enough of a frame.
Yeah. The chapter, How to Love Yourself in Your Body and Your Health, we look at how your body is a friend. Your body is a friend. We often don't see it. We see it as something that's against us and we need to overpower it. And people have very painful and fractious relationships with their bodies, especially when it comes to health and body image, etc. But when it comes to health, our body has aches and pains and disorders in all sorts of areas. And I find that if we take the perspective of your body being a friend who is helping you, your partner in learning to love yourself and live in the most optimal way, then any of those symptoms that you have are in fact your body highlighting an area or a way that you're not loving yourself in the way that you could be. So the idioms that we use all the time without even realizing it in English and in pretty much every other language I've encountered, because I've done this with people who speak lots of different languages, and then I ask them to just do it in their mother tongue, and it's amazing. The expressions that I get to hear are quite fun. So the idea is to think of the body part that's aching or troubling you in some way, and then to ask yourself, without giving it too much thought, to come up with an idiom, the first idiom that pops to your mind about that body part. So putting his back out, bending over backwards, pain in the neck, doesn't have a leg to stand on, like, a yoke on my shoulders, bites the hand that feeds. We use these expressions all the time. So to listen for what the first idiom that comes to your mind is, and then ask yourself, what does that idiom mean to me? So it's not like a quiz at school where you have to get the answer right. It doesn't matter what other people might say. What does it mean to me? And then ask yourself, where am I doing that in my life? Did you do the exercise when you read it in the book?
Yeah, I did, and it was a pain in my neck at the time, and I was like, "Who in my life is a pain in my neck?" And at the moment, I was like, "Oh, my mum's being a pain in the neck." Sorry, mum. And yes, that was kind of just like, oh, it kind of gave me it actually softened a little bit in that moment of just recognizing the first piece of just that awareness of, right, okay, that's the thing that my mind is kind of focusing in on, and this is now my body's presentation of this pattern or this belief that's going on in my subconscious mind that I'm not even aware of the verbal thought patterns, but my body is helping me to see it. And so that was one of my many experiences with it.
It's incredible. Thank you for sharing it. It's incredible how in tune it is. It's so, and it is the unconscious stuff, because I guess if we were conscious of it, we would change it, and our body's making us conscious of it. So the beautiful thing is then you would say, okay, well, if I love myself, what would I do about the situation with my mom right now? Or what would I say to myself about feeling this way about my mom? And then that's the way to know what to do with it, because obviously becoming aware is a relief, but you do want to also do something with it.
And interestingly, ironically, whatever the word is, in that moment, it was for me to give myself permission to be who I wanted to be and to go down this venture. So it was both parts of what we've been talking about.
So amazing. The title for my second book, this You Have Permission to Exist, it came from the workshops and from running, the courses, etc., because I found myself saying that phrase almost not with frustration, but sort of emphatically trying to say to people, but you have permission to exist. People, you have permission to exist. And found myself repeating it. And there was one woman who did quite a few of my workshops. She just kind of kept coming back for more. And one day I said that phrase again, and she said, "Oh, it gets me every time you say that." So it was really funny, because the second book was going to be called also, If You Loved Yourself, What Would You Do Now in Yourself? Because the first one's in your life. This book was like, no, I want my own identity. Okay, I'd already told people part 2 would be coming out, and now it was going to be something different. And then this phrase popped into my head quite quickly, and I was like, Oh, okay. And then this woman said, when I told her this is what the book's going to be called, she said, oh, that makes sense, because if you loved yourself, you'd give yourself permission to exist.
Yeah, yeah.
So I hadn't thought about it that way, but for her, she said, yes, it's the obvious sequel.
Yeah, it's really yeah. I feel you in the need somehow for myself, and then I guess I'm projecting onto people, for people to really give themselves that permission, and the sadness around how as children or in our society we believe somehow we don't even have that permission to be ourselves, and that in itself is kind of this foundational curiosity I have about, not to go into a huge thing about educational systems, but how we're not serving children in being themselves. We're trying to get children to be good kids that are not themselves, but do what we say. And oftentimes do what we say and not what we do. And that permission aspect, it's so easily adopted for a child, and kind of seemingly the insignificant moment of the parent ignoring the child because they're busy making food, and the child then creates this belief about themselves. And so I wonder, and I guess you share about this in your book, if you have any tips or suggestions. You have the 3 statements each day with how people can support themselves to nurture that permission to be vulnerable, permission to be creative, permission to exist foundationally, but maybe there's some other little branches and roots that come off that.
First, in response to what you're saying, I wanted to ask, have you listened to the parenting chapter yet?
Yes, I have. Yeah, I remember you giving some examples with your kids, and there was a great example, side note, of you getting angry at one moment, or maybe one of your clients was getting angry at one moment, and actually, we're not the Buddha all the time. We don't have to be equanimous to everything. And actually, it's important for children to recognize that there are boundaries that they can cross. You can get angry. And every time I'm like that with my son, I'm stay there with him in connection, and I love him, and we end up with a hug at the end of it. And so there's lots of moments that I have, well, not lots, but there's moments from my childhood where one of my parents was angry, I was shouted at, and then I went off and stewed in my own self-pity, not really understanding why I was shouted at, and then kind of making up these beliefs in my head of I'm not enough, or I can't be playful, or I can't be whatever. And so that kind of came to me in that moment of staying in love there. So that was what I took from that chapter.
I'm glad. Well, that was an example of mine, not a client.
Okay. Yeah.
Just so we clear the non-Buddha-ness, that was me. What to even say? I want to bring it into I'm very fond of simplicity. I'm very fond of, even though I love words, I think less words, more simplicity is really helpful. People often ask me, what is self-love? Because I talk about self-love, and if you loved yourself, what does that even mean? And obviously that's the whole topic, but I really, really like to keep it very simple. For me, self-love is meeting your needs. That's it. Now, the topic of needs, of course, is a whole huge thing, and I've addressed it in detail in my books, but we do all have needs. And as you were speaking about the plant earlier, kind of choosing if to go to the sun or to the dark. Mm-hmm. Needs on a plant is really simple. It needs light, it needs water, it needs decent soil and enough of a pot and a good place to be. It's obvious, and it's obvious to us that if the plant doesn't get those things, it will either, wilt or die. But we have needs as well. We have lots of needs. Some of them are really, really obvious, like food, water, sleep, etc. And then some of them are less obvious, like affirmation, safety, beauty, courage. And we treat ourselves as though it's perfectly okay for our needs to not be met, and that we must somehow keep going and thriving. And I think this is a huge topic for your people that you work with, because especially when we're driving ourselves and we have our own business and we're entrepreneurs, it's very hard to stop anytime, but it's hard to acknowledge that I have a need. I have a need for rest. I have a need for some fun. Fun is an actual need. It's a human need, but we think of it as a nice to have, not as a need. And sure, you can survive without fun, but will you thrive? No. So there are a lot of things that are actual needs. And like, yes, you can survive with just your basic needs covered, but there are a lot of other needs that we have that if they're not fulfilled, we will not thrive. We will not be our greatest self. We will not be as productive. We won't be as successful. We treat ourselves as though we don't have needs, as though we should function on not enough sleep, more coffee, less love, less physical connection. So you're asking me, what can people do? What is something simple people can do, in a daily way? It's to become aware of some of your needs and meet them. Take the break when your body is aching and you've been sitting staring at your screen for a really long time. Take the break. Say no to that invitation that you really, really don't want to go to. Choose the thing that's healthier. Drink enough water. Give yourself permission to have needs.
Yeah. I think that's a powerful lesson. And there's something else that just came to my mind, which I feel compelled to speak to. It's kind of a separate topic, but also the same. And it's about this challenge for a lot of entrepreneurs who are creating businesses and who are driving themselves out of a need to appease their parents. And for a lot of people, myself included, there was a sense of I wanted to make my dad proud. Wanted for him to finally say, I've seen your achievements, you've accomplished everything you've done, I'm so proud of you, there's nothing else in your life you need to do to be loved.
I'm going to interrupt you if I may. May I?
Yeah, please.
You were not doing it to please your dad. You were doing it to try and meet your need for approval and reassurance and affirmation and being seen and acknowledged. Very real needs. And you were doing it to try and meet your needs, not to please your dad.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
It was driven by our needs. We're doing everything. Every single thing you do is to try and meet your own needs. And that's not a bad thing. It sounds horribly selfish and whatever, but even parenting, those moments where you just really need a break and your child really needs you and you're just like, no, I can't anymore. And then you take a breath and you suck it up and you go and you attend to your child. You're not doing that for your child. You're telling yourself you're doing it for your child, but you're not. You're doing it because you want to be that parent. You're doing it to feel good about yourself. You're doing it because you want a child whose parent attends to him when he's struggling. That's what you want. It's got nothing to do with your child, actually. I find that very liberating.
Yeah. And it creates a beautiful frame for this recognition that, as you're saying, everything we do is somewhat of a projection of ourselves, or this unmet need inside that we haven't.
Meet our needs for the organism to thrive.
Yeah. And sometimes you need somebody else to help you to see what that need is, because as I kind of shared, you're projecting that need onto somebody else, and then there's a recognition of, but what is it that I need, rather than who I need it from. And I found in many instances where there's an underlying need, and there's a lot of offshoots in my day which show me what that need is. And it's not anything about the things, it's all about what the underlying core message is beneath all of that.
So that's another beautiful thing about the love question and the allow process, which is that when you ask if I loved myself, what would I say to myself, or what would I choose to do now? The response you get, your system shows you how you can best meet the most pressing need of the moment. And you don't even have to know what the need is, because the answer that comes gives you that feeling of, and that is coming because the autonomic nervous system is going, yes, that need has been met, so we are well on our way to thriving. So often, like if you're stressed and you're like, not sure what to do, and then I stop, I go, if I love myself, what would I choose to do now? What would I say to myself? And then the answer is, there's time. I go, it's okay. Okay, that's true. There's time. I can take myself. Okay, there's time. And it just deeply meets my need for reassurance and for safety and for, lack of pressure. And it just meets my needs deeply, and I just relax. And then I can be more productive. I can be more functional because now I'm more relaxed. Like you said, the system settles and now we can think with a clearer mind. So if you don't know what you need, you can just ask the love question and it will give you the answer that actually meets the need of the moment.
Yeah, beautiful. I think that's a very potent message to take away, as sometimes for me especially there's a lot of trying to analyze, and sometimes the analysis serves no purpose other than for your own sense of importance.
Well, but then you'd ask, what needs am I trying to meet by doing this? See, you might have a need for clarity. You might have a need for importance, very legitimate need to know that you're important. There's lots of feelings that happen when we feel unimportant. None of them are pleasant.
Yeah, that's powerful. Yeah, I thank you for that perspective on how this question can go a layer deeper. It's really something that can kind of cut through a lot of the noise, can get right into the heart of supporting ourselves to be who we came here to be. And so my final kind of questions, I've actually got a couple more questions. The essence of this podcast is on full authentic expression, and I wonder what that means to you.
To me personally, or what I want to share? What do you mean? No, you know what? I will answer because I will answer about me, and then my full authentic expression can only come when my little girl self, the me that I was when I was a little girl, feels absolutely legitimized and able to be whoever she is in that moment, and to express and create and share and be and feel however is happening for her in that moment. And her is me. So there's an image in my mind of myself when I was little, and for some reason I'm always sitting on a particular couch in a particular room in one of my childhood homes. And it must have been a time when I felt very shut down, because I always go back to her in that moment, in that time, to little me sitting there. And all my positive messages that I want to bring her and bring myself, and I kind of go back in time and tell her it's okay and she's allowed to be who she is, they all go back to that one moment. So when I sit with her and I look at her and I go, I see you, and you can be and say and do whatever it is that is within you to express, that feels amazing. And so my full expression can only come when I'm looking after myself in that way that makes it safe for my young self, for my tender self, for my open-hearted self, who cares so much about harmony and peace and fairness. If she can feel safe enough because I'm looking after her, then I can express all of who I am and all of who, whatever it is that is in me that I haven't even allowed yet, haven't even discovered yet. So I guess it's about meeting my needs and knowing that I have my back, and that someone's going to make sure I'm okay, because then it doesn't matter what happens to me and what bad thing might befall me, because someone, me, is going to make sure that my needs are met and that I'm looked after, and I'll go get help, or I'll, make sure that I've got what I need. For me, that allows for full expression, because I know that I'm looked after by the person who knows me best.
And by the person who can only ever really look after ourselves, which is ourselves. Yeah, thank you. And my final question is always a big one to throw at people. And I kind of already think I know what it's going to be.
World peace. Okay, give me the actual question.
So if you only had one idea, one thing that you could say, that's the only thing you're going to be known for the rest of your life, what would that be?
You have permission to exist. You have permission to exist. You have permission to exist.
I will receive that personally.
I was sending it to you, actually.
Thank you.
It's for everyone, but it was to you.
Thank you. Yeah.
And I kind of want to ask you, how are you feeling at this point of this conversation?
Well, I'm feeling grateful for exploring these topics and for having an opportunity to have a taste of receiving some of your wisdom for some of my own challenges as I'm going on this journey. And with the journey of life, there is no perfect, there is only imperfect progress. And so it's nice to have some guidance into my own workings, and I'm going to most certainly take away the allow question and start applying that. And yeah, receiving the permission to exist speaks directly to my inner child, speaks to my own parts that feel vulnerable or not whole. And so, yeah, just a deep appreciation for you and for your work and for this time that we've had together in this moment.
Thank you so much. And thank you for reaching out to me.
Yeah, pleasure. Yeah.
You receiving my weekly I Love Myself letter, and then you emailed me.
Yeah, and that's a great point. So if anybody wants to find out more about you, where's the best place to find you?
My website is ifilovedmyself.com. So that's the best place. That's where I put everything that needs to be found. And I do recommend that people sign up for my free weekly I Love Myself letter, because it comes on a Wednesday morning in the middle of the week as a little reminder to go, hi, are you listening to yourself? Are you meeting your needs? So yeah, it's a little empowerment, and people refer to it as free therapy. So if you want free therapy from a psychologist weekly, sign up for that letter. I think it's ifilovedmyself.com/subscribe.
Beautiful. And obviously you have many books, but two books. I thought there was no more, but yeah, there are 2 books. If I Love Myself, it's called If I Love Myself, What Would I Do Now? Or is it called just If I Love Myself?
If you loved yourself, what would you do now?
Yeah. And then the second book is You Have Permission to Exist.
And they're both on Kindle and Amazon and Audible as well.
Yeah, great. And I'd highly recommend listening to them. I really enjoyed that journey with you in my ears as I was walking around. So that was a beautiful way to experience it. So thank you again. It's been a pleasure. And I hope you have a lovely evening, and we'll, I'm sure, stay in touch.
Thank you. It was lovely to have this chat with you, and I hope that it benefits you and whoever listens. The other thing to mention is that I work a lot with healthcare practitioners, coaches, doctors, psychologists, psychiatrists, physios, OTs, all healers. My huge intention is to help them learn how to love themselves well, how to make decisions that are looking after themselves in their work and in their personal lives. And so my courses are actually accredited for continuing education credits for a whole year's worth of it. And it's a transformational journey for practitioners. So if anyone listening is a coach or a therapist or a doctor or healer of any kind, that is definitely worth looking into. I run it once a year, so registration opens once a year, and it's really a profound healing journey for healers, because the ripple effect is massive. Each one healer who looks after themselves well spreads it to all the people that they engage with. That's a real passion of mine, and working with leaders as well. It's the same story, one leader who looks after him or herself well empowers hundreds or thousands of others. And so that's a great passion of mine, to spread the self-love and this to healers and leaders.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thanks for listening to today's episode. I hope you found some nuggets of wisdom that you can take away and start implementing in your own life. If you did, then it would mean a lot to me if you gave the show 5 stars and subscribed. That way you can come back for more next week and help spread the word. And if you really loved it and you want to find out more about how to work with me and how I can help you, then check out the links below or head over to my website, www.richadriansmith.com. And if this is bye for now, then I wish you a rich life.